What's up? This is Dmitry, and today I want to start something new. Yes, that's my mood for today. So most of you who's watching this video, otherwise you wouldn't clicked on it, is treating photography and videography as a hobby or as something you just got into and you want to learn more. Well, at least most of us have social accounts and we need to know how to generate better content, right? And one thing that I've learned from my past experience is that whenever you start something new, you should really dig into the basics before you jump into complex problems and challenges. And these series are going to be exactly about that. We will cover all aspects of photography and videography. We will start with the simplest concepts and then move on to more complex things that I've learned myself by just reading, learning, practicing, and repeating. So if you do like the format by the end of this video, subscribe to this channel as more to come. And of course, treat me by clicking that like button. So, Photography 101. First lesson. We will cover the most basic, but actually not as simple question as it may sound. What a camera is and what are the differences between them. Ready? Bring it on. Intro. So what cameras do we have and which we're going to be comparing today? We will start with the baseline. We will start with the camera that most of you have. Yes, you got it right. Phone camera. Then we will move on to action cameras or point and shoot cameras. Then we will talk about the DSLRs and mirrorless cameras. And lastly, we will also cover the film cameras. But before even talking about them, let's start with what a camera actually is. Camera is an optical instrument that allows us to transform the light around us into some sort of physical or digital representation of the view. And let me show you what a very basic camera is, and in order to do so, let's move to the whiteboard. As I mentioned, camera works with light, and light is everywhere. It reflects from objects, creating colors, highlights, and shadows. Cameras are capturing specific scene, which means we don't need all the light, we need only specific part of it. This is why we need lens. And lens should be shaped in a way that it collects only required parts of the light, so that we get the image. So here is our tunnel for the light. And the reason why we do need a lens is because without it, we would be getting light from everywhere and it will be reflecting from the tunnel and would not give us any useful information at all. So some will be going like this, some will be capturing like this. So we're just gonna get a blurry image, and this is what actually you see if you're gonna open your camera and take the lens off. It's gonna be a very blurry image. That's why we need to have a lens. Lens will shape the light in a way that it will be reflecting and going in a straight line. Whenever the light comes, it will be angled in a way that it will always go in a straight line. Okay, so now we have a lens that will direct the light into the correct direction. So now we somehow need to capture that light. And this is where sensor comes in. Don't worry if you don't understand what sensor is. We will do a deep dive on that in one of the next videos. But in simple terms, it's a device that transforms the light into an electrical signal if it's a digital sensor, which then is being passed to the processor, which then uses that information to generate an image. And in simple terms, if you look at the phone camera, that's what it is. A lens, a space to forward the light, and a sensor that will capture that light and will transform into an image. Mobile phones are usually very small, which means that you're not gonna get a massive lens, you're not gonna get a big sensor, which will lead to a pretty poor image quality. And in order to fix that, mobile cameras are famous for its post-processing. Nowadays, whenever you take a photo, your phone actually makes hundreds of enhancements to the photo itself to make the image quality better. And the phones are getting smarter and smarter every single day. So sometimes you can't even tell whether the photo was taken on a professional camera or just on a normal phone. So the pros of these cameras is obviously portability, the size, and enhanced post-processing. On the con side though, you still relatively don't get that good image quality, especially in the low light, as the smaller sensor you have, the less light it can consume. Also, you have lack of flexibility, so you can't change the lenses or add any filters. Oh, and by the way, you get mobile cameras on all the non-professional drones as well. I never thought of creating a battle between drones. There are like robotic fights. Why can't we do the drone fights? So now let's move on to action cameras and point and shoot ones. I don't have latter one with me, but here is a good representation of an action camera. These cameras are usually not that different from phone cameras, but they usually have bigger sensor, more enhanced lenses, some of them even allow you to interchange them, and they are usually built for specific needs. So for example, this GoPro, it has a very wide lens, so it allows you to shoot action, movies and videos, and it has a special ceiling so you can shoot underwater. Pros of these cameras is that usually they have better image quality than the phone cameras because they have bigger sensor, which also means they're usually better in low light, not this one. They're also easy to use, they're compact, they have special features like underwater filming and the wide angle for action shooting, and they're relatively cheap. Cons is that you still don't get that great of a quality of the image on these cameras, and actually you don't get that level of post-processing as on phone cameras, so you still need to control the quality of the image yourself. You also still don't get that level of flexibility as the professional cameras. So conceptually, it is a very similar camera than your phone camera. So let's move on. Point and shoot cameras are actually getting us closer to more of a semi-professional and professional cameras, which are categorized in 3 groups: DSLRs, SLRs, and mirrorless cameras. So when we're moving to this category of cameras, we are looking at specialized equipment for photo and video. Historically, because there were no screens, digital screens on the cameras, and you would still want to see what you're shooting, engineers came up with something called viewfinder. But hey, based on our picture, how can we add our eye in the middle, as then we will just close the view for the sensor. So if we would add an eye somewhere here, it would block all the light. This is where SLR and DSLR cameras come in. They stand for digital single lens reflex cameras. So if we're talking about SLR cameras, they, instead of digital sensor, they're using film, which is basically a special strip with light sensitive silver halide crystals which react on light. So whenever you capture an image, you will get a negative view of the light on that film, which then had to be manually post-processed. But we still haven't answered the question on how are we gonna see the shot before we take one without blocking the light coming to the sensor? Well, we add a set of mirrors. Now, with these 2 mirrors, you can see everything through the viewfinder. But whenever you click the shutter, this mirror actually just goes up and all the light will be caught by the sensor. So why not creating mirrorless cameras from the start? Well, because keeping the sensor always on gets it to overheat. Plus, it consumes a lot of power. So technology of the past could not solve this problem, and even the first versions of mirrorless cameras had a lot of issues with the overheating and very quick drainage of the batteries. Now, with mirrorless cameras, they have removed the mirror at all, which made the device much more compact. And the viewfinder became electronic, it's just a screen. So you don't see the actual image, you see a screen which will just represent what sensor is seeing. Pros of DSLRs, SLRs and mirrorless cameras is that you get an opportunity to have interchangeable lenses. You also get the full functionality for photography and for videography, and of course the sensor on these cameras is much bigger, so you will get an amazing image quality, especially in the low light, and of course much better depth of field. Let's move on. Cons of those is that it's already a dedicated device, so get ready to have a separate bag for the camera itself, for the lenses, for the batteries, etc, etc, etc. Also, there is going to be a steeper learning curve of how to use it, how to properly set it up, but that's the exciting part, isn't it? And let's learn together. So make sure you subscribe to this channel if you're enjoying this format so far. And for the reasons mentioned, these cameras are definitely more expensive. So get ready to spend some bucks. But this is where you get unlimited options really, because the more specialized, the more feature-rich camera you choose, obviously the more expensive it's gonna be. But functionally, the camera for $700, for $3,000, for $40,000, they're gonna be the same. So now you can show off to all your friends that you know how the cinema cameras work. Last but not the least, and actually they are much simpler than all the cameras we've been talking about today, I want to talk about film cameras. Not movie cameras, but the film cameras. The only reason why I wanted to put them last is because nowadays not actually many people get to have an opportunity to work with film cameras, and a great example of one is the Polaroid. So you can see that the camera itself is actually extremely simple. You have the basic lens, instead of digital sensor, you have the Polaroid film, which is light sensitive, and whenever you expose it to the light, it will start the chemical reaction which will transform it into a photo for you. And that's it for today. So now you should understand what the basics of the camera are. You should understand what the difference is between the phone, action, DSLR, mirrorless cameras. And if you learned something new, smash that like button so I know how many of you have learned something today. And I will see you in the next episode. See ya. Bye.